Oh, dear me. Let's get this ready. Right then. Are we ready? Are we seating comfortably, children? In that case, we shall begin.
On this episode, I show you some nerd porn,
Which is the wiring diagram.
I show you a battery,
You can see battery here. Now, clear that's going to come out.
and I show you a plug.
What you'll find out, that's actually a plug. I'm not sure I could actually be a teacher. Wiring diagrams. I'm doing this video because I got in a conversation with Ray3866. I believe it was last year, might have been at the beginning of this year. And he wanted to know if he could remove something from his bike and would it affect his motorcycle in any detrimental way. The problem was, as he said, he didn't know how to read a wiring diagram, and most people don't. To be quite honest with you, reading a wiring diagram is pretty much like learning a complete new language. And it's true. If you look at this could either be spaghetti, the map of the London Underground, or, to people like me, absolute porn, because it is a wiring diagram. Now, this one you can see here is the same wiring diagram that is on Ray's Suzuki S60 and Doodle-on-a-motorcycle's S650. I'm going to link both of these two guys into this. So it is a very nice, simple one. It's a very easy one to learn with, and I will put a link in the description to this, because you can download this offline so that you can actually look at it yourself and learn. And we shall try and find some way of expanding your knowledge when it comes to wiring and the electrics, because it usually scares the crap out of people, electrics does. And then when you can understand the basics, then you can move on to something like this, which is the wiring diagram for my bike. And yes, it's over 2 pages. Can you see that? It is physically over 2 pages, but most of the principles are still the same. So, how do you read a wiring diagram? Well, before we go any further, there are some things you need. Number 1, a pen. Number 2, another pen, preferably a different colour, as you can see. Number 3, some sort of straight edge. Ruler, protractor, set square, as long as it's got an edge. Okay. Number 4, a wiring diagram, as you can see. Now, I will apologise for the shaky camera, because I'm holding it by hand, and I'm going to build a rig later, now that I've realised that I've got to hold it by hand, because in order for you to see, I have to zoom in, and it's not very good. So, how do we read a wiring diagram? Well, the first things first is you need to know some basics. Now, on every wiring diagram, we have a key, yeah? So up in here in this top corner, we have a key to the wiring diagram, yeah? So it explains things like connectors, ground, and connectors. Again, yeah? So you've got varying different connectors. So if you look here, over this side, you see these connectors are here and here, yeah? And then you've got connectors down here. Ooh, hello, bit too far. There, yeah? So they're all connectors, as it says there. Now, ground. This is the most important thing. The reason I'm saying ground is the most important thing, because 80 to 90% of all problems you will ever have with an electrical system will be down to a grounding problem or earthing problem, which is, as you can see, there's earth there, and then there's the earth there on the battery. What you will find is if you look at your bike, look at your battery, this will be connected to the frame, because your frame forms part of the electrical circuit. It is the ground, it is the earth, it is a way back, otherwise you'd have lots of wires coming back to your battery, which is pointless, so it uses the actual frame itself. And when you look around, you'll find varying different earthing points on your frame, and this is where most of the issues lie. It means that it's got corrosion on there, and it needs to be cleaned. basically, because electricity likes to follow the path of the least resistance, and if there's corrosion on there, it creates resistance, and electricity, for some reason, doesn't like resistance. Now, as I say, even if we are talking about a complex wiring harness, excuse me while I change hands, and I move the piece of paper across. Look at this. No expense spared whatsoever for this video, he says. Always identify variant points. The first thing you need to identify is the battery. Yeah? So always identify your battery. Oh, my pen's dry now. So that battery here on the easy one, and then if you move over to the difficult one, you can see battery here. I don't know how clear that's going to come out. Yeah? So there, battery. And this is the main thing. Once you find your battery, you can pretty much find everything else. Now, reading a wire diagram is like reading a foreign language, and it's also a bit like reading a map of the Underground, particularly the London Underground, because you always have a starting destination and an ending destination. And say you want to identify, remember all these wires. Now, the reason why they've all these pretty colours is because this represents and this links to the wires that are on the wiring harness. So say, for example, that you need to find out which wire is responsible for, let's think, your side stand switch. Here we are, side stand switch, which is a good one. The reason why I'm saying this is because one of my Instagram followers, I can't remember her name quite at the moment, and when I do I will stick a link up. She needed to take off her side stand because she'd lowered the bike and it was actually catching on the ground, so she was just going to rely on just the centre stand and not the side stand. Now, as everybody knows, the side stand switch has a link to the starter, which stops you from starting it while it's in gear. And the reason for that is that if the side stand's down and it's in gear and you ride around a corner with it down, it tends to kind of throw you off the bike. Trust me, I know this, I've done it so many times. So say, for example, this is what you want to do. You want to find out which switch is responsible. Now, usually black means negative, yeah, and the colour means positive, okay? And you need to find out where they go and what you can do about it. Now, I always recommend that you start at your battery and work your way through, or start at the item that you want to disconnect in some way, shape or form and work your way through. Now, what you can notice here is a connector here, so that means these two wires are connected. And basically what you'll find is actually this is likely to be a negative switch, because you can have a positive switched system or a negative switch system. So positive switch system means it's a switch where positive goes to positive. So in order for it to go through, the switch has to create a bridge to allow the positive to flow through, or a negative allows the circuit to come back on itself. So it actually creates the ending part of the circuit so the electricity can flow backwards. So what you've got here is our side stand switch, which is we're going to highlight. So you highlight your side stand switch and say okay, and what you know is that this green wire here is your side stand switch. So if you go onto your bike, you will find this green wire, and then what you can do is you can cut it and join it together, because it's going to be no problems. There's going to be no issues with joining these together, so it just bypasses this switch. And that's a very simple way of actually reading a wiring harness. Now, obviously, the other way of reading a wiring harness is to isolate a problem, to isolate issue. And the best example I can give here was when my poor old jelly bean was stolen some time ago. We got him back, and for the love of money we couldn't get it started. Put a new ignition switch and everything on there and it wouldn't start, and we needed to find out why. Now, I can use this rather than the 600 because it's just as simple. And basically what it was is that I needed to find out where the power was going from and where the power was going to. And what we found out that there was no power getting from the battery to the ignition switch, which is over here. Okay, so how do I work out what wires and where the power goes? Well, what you can do is you can actually literally, and this is why I suggest a pen, draw on your wiring diagram. So, and you're drawing it in the way that the power's going. So the powers are coming along here. What you'll find out, that's actually a plug. So when you get to your wiring diagram, you go, oh look, there's a plug there. And you keep coming along, coming along, coming along, coming along. And we trace the wire all the way up. And we find a fuse. Now this is your main circuit fuse. There's always a main circuit fuse in the bike. And then we can go, well hang on a minute, I've got no power going to the ignition. So this is your main, this, as we go up, we'll zoom out. This is your main power for your bike, coming from the battery all the way through. And this is your main fuse. So if there's no power going to the ignition switch, which is all the way down here, there's a good possibility is that it's being stopped here. It's being blocked. Yeah? Ooh. So it's being blocked. See, look, no expense spared for you guys. None whatsoever. And this is what it was. It was the fact that the main fuse had blown. So we found the main fuse on the bike, changed, replaced it, and then we got power going through to our ignition. Because obviously we can continue, if we follow this all the way down, what we will find is, oh, listen to that sound. It goes across to the ignition. So there we go. So that's basically our ignition circuit. Remember, everything's a circuit because it will return back. Everything returns back. So what you'll find is that there's a negative that's going to come out of here somewhere and return it back to the battery. Yeah? So in summary, it doesn't matter if it's a simple wiring diagram like this or a really complicated one like this. Yeah, which is really complicated, as you can see, because it's across 2 pages and there's lots of colours. Identify what you want. Yeah, identify things like your grounds, which are here. Yeah, identify your components, so like starter motor, starter relay, ignition, which is up here. And then and if need be, if you want to find out where a wire's going or why you're not getting power somewhere, trace it through beforehand. Yeah, trace it through. It is pretty much like reading a foreign language, and it's one thing I'm going to say is it's not very easy trying to explain it over a video, to say the least. If you've got any comments, please leave them down below. I'm more than willing to go over anything you've got. If there's anything you particularly want to talk about, I'm more than willing to talk about it. I'm going to put this lovely diagram on the link to this, because you can print it off, so that you can then start practicing yourself looking through a very simplistic wiring diagram. Yeah, it's very good for fault finding and very good for helping you diagnose problems that you may get. But remember, if you have an electrical problem, always find your earth, check your earths, because it's usually that's causing you problems. If you do like this video, don't give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, which is somewhere else, and I shall catch you on Saturday with another high quality video from me. So anyway, don't forget to stalk me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and tweet me at Nige-Rider. Hope this was alright. Cheerio.